Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you're coming back. Welcome if you're joining for the first time. My name is Marissa Price. I am a social worker, healer, business educator, virtual assistant. And I'm here with my wonderful client, Dr. Kimani.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about how childhood trauma primes us for toxic jobs. And we've been talking about this a little bit, just seeing those connections and how real they are. So I am so excited to chat with her tonight.
Yeah.
But I will pass it over to her to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her channel.
Okay. Thank you, Marissa. I always
Yeah.
praise you so much every day. I'm praising Marissa Price. Okay. So I am Dr. Kimani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, also a toxic job survivor. My YouTube channel, Lifting Us We Climb Consulting Wellness Services, focuses on helping as many Black women as I can to leave and heal from toxic jobs. So I'm very excited to be here and to support you.
Yay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So for those of the audience who doesn't know, why would you or why did you choose to focus your channel on Black women in toxic jobs? Because
Oh,
it's so
yeah.
real for a lot of us, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So, I'm a toxic job survivor, and
Yeah.
I know, and as mental health
Yes.
professionals, that part of the healing is to keep telling your story. And
Yeah.
so that really sparked my whole YouTube channel. I was in Stephanie Perry's YouTube challenge,
Hmm.
and she went around and she asked each of us what topic were we going to cover in terms of our YouTube channel. And I said, I don't know, maybe Black women in toxic jobs. I really didn't know. Black women in toxic jobs. She said, girl, do it. It was like, she said, do that today. Okay. And so that it really started in terms of my own healing. So I was trying to heal from my own trauma because I
Hmm.
knew I couldn't keep it inside. And I knew that because of what I was going through at that toxic job, one of the ways that they were trying to, I call it psychological lynching. One of the things that they were trying to do to humiliate me was to silence me. So my healing and my response was, I'm going to get louder. I'm going to get on YouTube.
Mm.
And the more I started talking on YouTube, the more Black women from around the world have reached out to me and said, me too, me too, me too. Are you in my head? I'm having a similar experience. So that's why it fuels me every time I get new comments from Black women. And I will continue to talk about it because these environments, like we talked about before, Marissa, Colette,
Hmm.
we talk about these jobs many times are like plantation. So that's my channel.
They are. They are. And like you said, it's a worldwide issue, right?
Yes.
You have Black women all over the globe being like, okay, I experienced that too.
Yeah, it's a
And we see
similar
like,
dynamic.
yeah, yeah.
Very
And we see
disturbing.
the common thread is white supremacy
Yes.
often, right?
Yes.
People upholding white supremacy, maintaining it, continuing to oppress us in these work environments. So
Yes.
that's real. And I know your channel has been pivotal in my healing process. Like
Oh,
even stumbling across it, like thank you for the YouTube algorithm, right? Because I came across your channel when I was like struggling heavily in this toxic job. And
yeah.
just seeing that I wasn't alone in that and seeing and being in the chat and seeing other Black women share their stories, that, proved to me I wasn't alone,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that this
Yeah.
is so common.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I'm being obedient to what God is saying to me. So God was saying to me initially, you got to go. So I paid attention to that. I
Yeah.
resigned. Right. Then God was saying, you need to share your story. So I started sharing my story. And then when I am continuing to be obedient, I'm reinforced by how many Black women are reaching out to me. I got an email from a Black woman in Australia
Oh,
recently,
wow.
in the
Yeah.
Netherlands. It's the same dynamic. But, I hope that Black women can see us, they can see Colette Elizabeth, they can see all of us, and they can see that we have options. You don't have to stay at a toxic job. You can find something different. You really can do well after you leave, and that healing is possible.
That's key. Yes, you do have options. Because,
Yes.
like, when we're in those toxic work environments, it feels like tunnel vision. Like, this is the only thing I can ever do. Even though we have, all the skills, all the certifications, all the education,
Yep.
it's like we forget. We forget about our skill set because the trauma is so intense.
And the
So, yeah.
trauma, right? And I just think about
Hmm.
like the outstanding videos from Alicia Renese talking about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I've done a
Hmm.
series of reaction videos to imposter syndrome because imposter syndrome makes us think that it's the individual, but it's the
Yes.
system that is rigged. And so it gets in our head. We talked about this before about self-gaslighting. They get in our head and they make us think
Yeah.
that we are the problem and we're not the problem. But then we start questioning ourselves. But to know as Black women, we know to even get these jobs that we have to be up and above, because they're not going to give us
Yes.
a pass. We can't be mediocre at best at these jobs.
No.
Other people can, but we can't. But we start deluding ourselves. There's something wrong with us.
Yes, that's so true. That's so true. And the topic of this discussion tonight is how childhood wounds and childhood trauma may prime us to enter these toxic work environments.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know, just what characterizes a toxic work environment in your experience and expertise?
Yes, yes. So I always say to people that it's really specific to each person. However, when we look at the common theme in terms of a toxic job, it's anything that causes you harm. So toxic is a poison. So the poison is coming into your system. It's impacting you physically, psychologically, spiritually. So those things we talked about in terms of self-gaslighting yourself, not think you have options, think you have to stay at a toxic job because you rather say the devil you know than the devil you don't know, right? So that those lies that we tell ourselves, and then the toxicity is painful and it's very dangerous, because now it's spilling over into not only your work life, but how you're perceiving yourself. And then it spills over to your home life. So once you leave the job, you're still dealing with all that toxicity. It's like an all-consuming existence, and the job is the center of your existence. So that's what makes it toxic.
That's key. Yeah. And we see it, like, I know for me, it had ripple effects, right, throughout my life. So it
Yeah,
wasn't just this environment, it spilled over to my relationships and stuff like that. So I know that's the thing for a lot of us. We go through that.
absolutely.
And we wonder why our relationships are suffering. Well, because you're in this toxic work environment, like,
Yes,
often
yes,
and dealing with these
yes,
things. Yeah.
yes. And even if we think about it from the perspective of, you know, not only are we being harmed, but those that care about us are being harmed, because they're seeing what's happening to us. They feel helpless. They feel hopeless. They don't even know how to help us. And that you are not your full self in terms of those you care about, you love. The job is like sucking all the life out of you, sucking your
Yes.
health, your peace, your rest. It's just sucking all that out of you.
All of it. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So I did want to talk about childhood trauma, since you are a licensed clinical psychologist.
Yes.
Just what childhood trauma may look like and how it might impact us in adulthood. So I do have an upcoming workshop with Angela Canu coming up on healing from attachment wounds.
Yes.
So that's one part of childhood trauma that people may experience. But yeah, just an overview, I guess, a summary of like what childhood trauma is for those who may not know.
Yeah. So childhood trauma is when something really bad happens to you, and it gives you a sense
Yeah.
that you have no control of your life. So that sense of lack of safety, lack of security, and it impacts how you see yourself and how you view the world. So you can start viewing yourself as, I have no sense of control over my life. And you can start viewing the world as a very dangerous place to be, and that you cannot trust anyone. So then that carries over in terms of how you present yourself, how you interact with others, your views of the future. And so it has a lot of parallels when you think about going into a job, in particular a toxic job, how a lot of that trauma is triggered by the workplace. And that's how you can tell, again, that the job is toxic, is that it starts triggering your own unresolved childhood traumas.
Yeah, that was the case for me. I know my therapist, when I started therapy, she's like, how does this, connect? What are the links to what you experienced in childhood? Because it seems like there are a lot of links there that you're kind of
Yes,
overlooking.
yes.
So that was pivotal. I had to
Mhm.
go back to, 10 years old and
Yeah,
revisit that time. I'm like, because I saw the patterns kind of being reenacted in this toxic work environment I was in. So yeah, the
absolutely.
impacts of that are real. Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's give a shout out to therapy. That,
Yeah.
that you went to therapy, and
Therapy.
also that therapists will help you identify those
Yeah.
connections you maybe were not even aware of. And so
Yes.
sometimes we play out, and in terms of therapy, there's enactments, right? So we play
Yes.
out the same dynamic over and over and over again in different areas of our lives, including
Yeah.
in the workplace.
Yeah, that's key. Therapy was key for me in my healing process.
Hmm.
Yeah, to identify those patterns.
Yes.
Because we can kind of get stuck in like the day to day, just going through life, and not realize that, oh my gosh, I'm reenacting a pattern that
Yes.
I experienced way back when I was young in
Yes. And
childhood.
that's why it could
Yeah.
be so devastating and painful because that those old unresolved wounds are triggered. Just think about being triggered every single day going into a job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I can remember it all too
Yes.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can. And I did want to ask you how childhood trauma may even impact the career decisions we make. So I know for me, like I made a lot of decisions in my career out of fear.
Hmm.
Hearing stories of my family living through poverty, right? The trauma of poverty and
Hmm.
feeling like I had to stay in a well paying position, even though it was kind of killing my spirit.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, just like the how childhood trauma may even impact like how long we choose to stay in a
Hmm.
job,
Hmm.
in the jobs that we seek out in the first place. What do
Yeah.
you
I think
think
the core
about that?
issue is fear. So,
Yeah.
in terms of childhood trauma associated with fear, and then how we're raised might support feelings of fear. And then the projected fears of those around us can cause us in terms of the jobs that we choose and the decision to stay because we are in a fear based mentality that it's the big bad wolf if we leave. And so then we like, oh, well, I don't want to go out there to something scary. So I'll just stay, but then again, feeling that sense of just misery and suffering and feeling like there's nothing better and just wallowing and so much helplessness and hopelessness and feeling on some degree also, Marissa, sometimes there could be a degree of self-loathing. There could be a degree of self-loathing about, what's wrong with me? Why am I not strong enough? I'm letting this happen to me. And so then that's another layer. When you start thinking about now you're questioning and challenging and just not valuing yourself, but not making that connection. I am this way because of what happened to me. And this job environment is reinforcing that. So that's why therapy is so important to make all those connections.
Mm-hmm. That's key. Yeah. Because of what happened to me, not because of who I am, right? Because a lot of
Right.
times we'll internalize this. Something's wrong with me. That's why they're treating me like this. It's like,
Yes.
no,
And
no,
then we
nothing's
start
wrong with
working
you. Yeah.
harder. And that's the danger of this too, is now when you're in a toxic work environment and you're starting to question yourself, and then they're sending you these subtle messages that you're not good enough, then what we do is we start working harder. So then that sets
Yes.
up a burnout, that exhaustion, right? And so we have to
Mhm.
be very mindful of that because burnout is dangerous because you usually don't recognize burnout until you're already in it. Because the
Mm,
characteristic is that you work harder. You're like, oh, wait a minute. They're thinking this way of me, or I think this about me, or whatever. So then you work even harder and then you
right.
get stuck. You get stuck in that.
Yeah, that's so true. That was the case for me.
Yeah.
Trying to work, and that was actually my next question. Like, how might it even affect our coping mechanisms, right? Because for me, I worked harder to try to
Yep.
win their approval, put in more hours, did projects that weren't even assigned to me to try to like make it work. I was so committed to that. And that might even be like a fawning trauma response, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'd just love to hear more about like our coping mechanisms that we
Yeah.
developed in childhood and how they might show up in the workplace.
Yeah. Well, see, this is it's several things. So one of the main things that we see in terms of trauma is avoidance. So many of us who've gone through some type of trauma, we have some avoidance in relation to what has happened to us. So the avoidance can be, um, I don't want to even think about applying for another job. I don't even want to think about what this might mean. I'll just stay here. So that's avoiding the unknown. But when you stay there, the short term is okay. Oh, good. I don't have to look for another job. I'm relieved. The short term is okay. Long term is horrible because then you start thinking, oh my God, like my life will never change again. The spiral, the helplessness, the hopelessness. And that's very dangerous. And I know you did a video about that before about no job is worth your life because the spiral can get so big that you don't see another way out. You just feel just like this is my life and I hate my life because of this job. And so the importance of recognizing, one, the avoidance is there. And then once we recognize the avoidance, what are the small steps we can take to address the avoidance? That's part of the trauma treatment. So part of trauma treatment is to acknowledge what is the source of the trauma and then to approach our avoidance. So for Black women and toxic jobs, the avoidance that I'm seeing a lot of Black women, they're avoiding leaving the job because of all these fears that are a lot of times these unresolved childhood issues, which might relate to finances, right? So as we grew up, I know as I grew up, you know, people always talk about money and, you know, that fear, all that kind of stuff. So that fear becomes internalized within us. So to avoid that feeling, we just say, I'm just going to stay at this job. I'm just going to stay. I'm just going to stay, right? So what I'm trying to do and the work that I'm doing is to help Black women approach what you're fearing the most. You got to approach it and you got to work through it. And the hope is that you have resources available. You access those resources to help you walk through the fear. So you're not avoiding it anymore. And to know as you're approaching those things that are fearful for you, to know it is scary. So don't lie to yourself and say, oh, it's scary. That means I shouldn't approach it. No, it's a normal reaction to that. I love that. Marissa, I love Marissa. I love her. Right. So, you know, again, avoidance, approach those things you're avoiding. Again, for me, the main thing I was avoiding at that toxic job, I hated it. I dreaded everything about it. I hated it, right? I could feel it right now. I hated it. But I was paralyzed by fear. I was paralyzed by the fear about my finances. And because of that, I started working with Dr. Roche Brown. You know, so Dr. Roche Brown's a financial psychologist. I started working with her because I knew I had to approach what I was fearing most. And so now we're partnering again to offer this masterclass coming up January 3rd and 4th. Get your money right to leave that toxic job. It's a financial masterclass for Black women because we're helping Black women. We're two psychologists. We're two licensed clinical psychologists. We're helping Black women approach what they've been fearing the most, because when you keep avoiding it, it gets like a huge snowball going down a hill. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger if you don't address it. So the masterclass is an opportunity for you to approach that thing that you've been fearing most, which is money.
That's key. Yeah. And that is January 3rd through the 4th.
January 3rd and 4th.
Next year. So start the new year off right.
Yes. Zoom webinar format. So nobody would know about the plantation. It's to protect your privacy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. But yeah, I did want to ask you how individuals with a history of childhood trauma, which is a lot of us, how might we be like affected or drawn to toxic workplaces in the first place, right? To kind of recreate those childhood dynamics and maybe seek a different outcome. Because I know that was the case for me. Like, let me see if I can get a different outcome in this environment, even though it was harming me so much.
Yes. Okay. Two things I want to say about that. Number one is I think many of us, because of our own unresolved childhood issues, that sometimes we may not recognize signs, the red flags, right? Like, oh my God, pay attention. We just keep it on the head, right? If I put my head down and I work really hard, this will be safe for me. I just put my head down, work really hard. No, that's not going to save us. The other thing is we lie to ourselves that we can have a sense of control over the work environment by subscribing to the lie, again, that if we work harder, then we can make this job better. But when we do that, you're not recognizing that the system is toxic. You can't fix the system. The system is toxic. So you are feeling the results of being in a toxic system. And as a result of your unresolved childhood issues, you're trying to make it better. You're trying to have some structure. You're trying to do all these things, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work. The whole system is toxic and it's rigged against you. So when you start recognizing, wait a minute, right? So you took a leave of absence. I took a leave of
Yeah.
absence. Thank God. I'm telling any
Mm-hmm.
women, if you can take a leave of absence from a toxic job, please do so. Because you can do that, you can wait a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like,
Yeah.
what was that about, right? And then while you're there, therapy and also exit planning,
Yes.
you can get out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, taking a leave of absence was like crucial for me. Like you
Ooh,
said, to have that space away, because when you're in it, it feels like this is the only thing I'm going to be in for my entire life, and
man.
you're just going to go on and on.
And then
Like,
you
but
have
when
to
you,
fight. So just think about it,
yeah,
Marissa, like you're going to
hmm,
work to do your job, but
yeah,
then at your job, you're fighting to do your job.
yes, that's a
Yes.
lot. That's too
Yes. It's a lot.
much.
It's too much.
And every
Every
day,
day.
right? And
And
we
then
spend so much of our lives.
and
Yeah.
then the weekend. So finally, okay, the end of your day, you're still
Hmm.
processing what happened at the job. So now it's carrying over to your personal life, right? Then the
Yes.
weekends, you're trying to strategize how you're going to handle the next work week. And
Hmm.
then you're like, okay, well, have a break. But then you're so exhausted, spending up all the extra time sleeping. And then let's not even factor in Sunday, because Sunday is dread day.
Oh,
I
Sunday
think I
was the
think I
worst.
think I think Dee's here, and Dee said
Yep.
that Sunday was like I think she said trigger day, right, Dee?
Yeah.
I think she said it was trigger day. So for me, it was 5 o'clock Sunday. I was like, oh my God, I got to go back to that place,
Yeah.
right? But Dee said trigger day. It was a whole day, and I think a lot of Black
Mm.
women have that same experience.
Yeah, Sunday was the worst. It was. And I had a work from home job. And
Oh, woo!
still on Sundays, I was like, I gotta log on Monday. I don't know how I'm gonna do this.
You know what? One of
Right?
my clients
Yeah.
said she mentioned being bullied from the laptop. She said, "I'm
Yeah.
tired of being bullied from the laptop." And for me, Marissa, particularly when the world was going through everything and we were working from home, I would do my work and I was so understimulated. It felt like all the energy was just sucked out of my body. And then I
Yeah.
was thinking, oh my God, I'm bringing the toxicity of that job. They're in my house now. And I used to say, and I
Mm.
used to really be intentional about this, Marissa,
Hmm.
before we were working from home and all that kind of stuff, I used to be very intentional that my home was my sanctuary space. I would not talk about that job. I would not talk about the workplace bully and her minions. They were not allowed in my home. But
Hmm.
then when we were all working from home, now they were invited back in my house. I was like, I don't want, I
That's
rebuke you.
real.
You are
That's
not
real.
invited in my home. No,
Hmm.
get out.
Yep.
I rebuke you. Get out of my house.
Yes. That's important to have those boundaries, right?
Yes.
Especially working from home. It feels like your personal life, your work life melts together. And
Yes.
especially being in a toxic work environment, it felt like I was there 24/7.
Ugh.
It's like, because my laptop was always in the corner looking at me, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was a
Yes.
lot.
And it's a
It was a
trauma
lot.
trigger. It becomes a trauma
Hmm.
trigger,
Yeah,
right?
it
Yes. Yes.
does.
Yes.
It really does.
Mhm.
But yeah, I wanted to ask like the different types of support or therapy approaches as we start to recognize that we may be, reenacting some of these patterns that we experience in childhood in the workplace. What are
Mhm.
some suggestions that you have for therapy um,
Well,
and other
there's
resources?
different
Yeah.
therapeutic perspectives and orientations and all that. I would say the most important thing is how you connect to your therapist. So I absolutely advocate for finding a Black therapist because
Yeah.
we have a level of understanding of one another. And I would say that's the first thing, right? And
Hmm.
then when you talk to the therapist, when you interview your therapist or interview therapist, excuse me, make
Yeah.
sure you pay attention to how you feel about that meeting. Do you feel like this person really understands you? Do they work with people who've had similar experiences as you? And then the other part is you need to be honest with your therapist. Some people share some of the truth, but not the full truth. It's not benefiting you. And you have to go to therapy consistently. And I got to add this, therapy is an investment. It's an investment. So just like other things you do, now you might spend money on your eyelashes, your eyebrows, your hair, your clothes. That's just money gone away. Think about therapy as an investment. It helps pour into you so that you grow. and you do better in life. So therapy,
Mm-hmm.
so important. And don't try to talk to your friends. It's like, oh, is she my therapist? No, you need to be with a professional therapist. And, I know there's a lot of life coaches out here. Life
Yeah.
coaches and therapy are two different things. Okay. Life
Mm-hmm.
coaches are not licensed mental health professionals. And I'm not saying anything negative about life coaches, but what I'm saying to you is that licensed therapists, they have a governing body. So if something goes wrong, you know that you have recourse. Life, my understanding is that life coaches don't have that same governing body, and we don't know in
Right.
terms of everybody having that consistent type of training and things like. I'm not trashing life coaches, right? Okay, I'm just saying,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of
Mm-hmm.
therapy, really unearthing those deep, unresolved issues, you need therapy. Okay. A life
Right.
coach can help you in terms of, okay, this is where you are now. These are things I can help you with. These are the steps. But make sure whoever you work with is able to support you. And if you have a life coach and the life coach is kind of crossing that line in terms of therapy, and they're not saying to you, you know what, I think maybe therapy might be a good option for you, be mindful of that boundary and don't start going into therapeutic conversations with your life coach.
Thank you for that. Yeah, those distinctions are important. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did want to mention if your employer has an employee assistance program, that
Mhm.
is what I use personally. They may offer free therapy sessions or reduced cost therapy sessions. So that's something to look into if you are looking to start therapy. But the cost is kind of, giving you some grief. So, yes, yes. And like you said, therapy is an investment. I
It
never
is.
heard it put like that before, but yeah, it
Yes, it's
is
an investment.
in
And then,
yourself. Hmm.
yeah, and then to also, as I mentioned, there's free therapy services for Black women. So access those free
Mm-hmm.
therapy resources. So the Loveland Foundation has free therapy vouchers for Black women. The Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, they'll periodically have campaigns for Black women. So there's resources available to us. Okay. If you have insurance, go to your insurance carrier. Some insurance carriers are better than others in terms of just when you talk to the referral directory person, say, I'm looking for a Black woman therapist and see if they can find that for you. Okay. And that you
Mm-hmm.
are a consumer. So you need to research and you need to interview that therapist as well.
That's key. That's key.
Hmm.
Interview your therapist too. Yeah, because
Yes.
not everyone's going to be the right fit,
No.
right? It's just like social work. Like we're people. We have the letters, but we're still people.
Yes.
So you may not mesh with everyone. Everyone may not
Yes.
get you, but it's important to do that process of interviewing them too.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have a question from here. Yes, Mara, how can we get access to the assistance service? So it's called the Employee Assistance Program. And if
Mm.
you look in your employee handbook, that's where I found it, or it may be on like an employee website. It will have it listed there where you have to go through, where you have to go to, the process, everything like that. So you should be able to find it there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
First, I wonder, can you respond or can you address the issue? Because I've gotten this question before. So, with the employee assistance program,
yeah.
because the employer is paying for it, what degree does your employer know about you accessing the service, and is it confidential?
It's supposed to be. That's what they tell us is confidential.
Okay.
I know my therapist, she only shared our notes when I went to apply for a short term disability at my
Okay.
job, which was rejected. That's a whole other story. But yeah, it's supposed to be confidential, right? Because it's that therapist client relationship.
Right.
I think the degree to which the employer knows about it is just like you submitting a claim and then they pay from it from there. I know it went through like a third party medical provider for me.
Okay.
But yeah, that's about what I know about that. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Good to
yeah.
know.
Yeah, but I do want to talk about, you mentioned self-gaslighting, which is
Uh,
something that we talk about
yeah.
a lot. If we are kind of thinking we may be experiencing some of these, same triggers from childhood, but we're falling into those patterns of self-gaslighting, being like, no, we're making it up. It's all in
Mm,
our heads. Even
mm,
people around us might be telling us these things.
mm.
How can we kind of get out of that pattern of self-gaslighting to realize that we may need help getting
Yeah.
out of this pattern that we're reenacting from childhood?
Okay. Number one,
Yeah.
do not vent with your coworkers. Okay. Don't vent with your coworkers and your colleagues and all that kind of stuff, because you never know how that's going to come back around and bite you in the butt. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is therapy, therapy, therapy. Because when you are talking to a therapist that is someone who is objective and you're able to tell them this is what's going on, this is what happened, and they can help you reality test. So self-gaslighting, you need to be able to reality test, because in that environment, they're gaslighting you so much that you have even lost sight of what is real. And so you need to be able to reality test with someone, and that person can help you recognize ways that you might not even know that you're self-gaslighting, but the therapist can tell you you are. Yep. You need that. You need that objective person.
That is so true. Yes. And I want to read this comment here. It's hard to find a good Black therapist. I know you have a video on this, how to find a Black therapist on your channel.
Yes.
That might be helpful with that. But do you have any like recommendations if people are looking for
Black
therapists?
Yes. So I would say, again, check out those different avenues I talked about. So again, if you have health insurance, go to your healthcare provider and ask them for a Black therapist. Okay. You still need to interview this therapist. So in that video that I have on my YouTube channel, I'll talk about some ways to interview the therapist and to pay attention to your gut. What is your gut saying to you about this person? That's number one. Number two, as I mentioned before, there's free therapy resources for Black women. So the Loveland Foundation, the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. The other thing is that we have a lot of Black women online therapy directories. Check those out. So it has information about the therapist based upon your state, right? So you have to work with a therapist who's licensed in your state. So there's therapy for Black girls, there's Black female therapists, there's even Psychology Today. So Psychology Today, you're able to see not only the background in terms of what the therapist works in terms of the areas of specialty, you can look at the costs or if they accept insurance, but a lot of times with Psychology Today, they'll have like a little video snapshot. So the therapist gives like a little video and you can kind of get a sense of, oh, like a lot of my clients who saw me on Psychology Today say, I like your video. I just connected to your video. I like what you were saying. So that is an option. Let me say this, Marissa, just to be transparent, that I'm not accepting new therapy client referrals. And I just want to say that because in the past, I was accepting so many clients that it became overwhelming. And I wasn't respectful of my own boundary. And so now I'm saying I'm not accepting new therapy referrals. However, I want to share with people how to find a good Black therapist.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And I think with your YouTube channel, people have just been resonating so much with your message. You're like, please help me. But yes, it's important to
and I want
it's important to respect your boundaries.
Yes. And so for me, I feel that even though I'm no longer accepting new therapy clients, that I'm helping Black women in other ways. So I'm talking on my YouTube channel a lot about Black women and providing resources, not only in terms of my own healing journey, but I'm sharing about other Black women and their healing journeys. And then these masterclasses that I have. So I'm like, okay, there's other ways that I can give back to Black women, even if I'm not your therapist.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you do so much and you share so much that has helped so many of us. So thank you. Seriously.
Thank you.
I do want to read a comment from Glamazini. Yeah, she said, I've done that, seek a different outcome to the pattern in a lot of areas of my life. Me too. And again, that may be rooted in those childhood things that we went through. Traumatic events in childhood.
Like we try so hard to make sense of things sometimes that don't make sense. And then we try so hard to try to have a sense of control of situations that we can't control. And it has to get a point where we say, this situation is not going to change. I.e. toxic job. This situation is not going to change. So I need to exit stage right. Okay. So Colette Elizabeth, I love her quote that she said, sometimes the strongest thing we can do is to walk away. And as Black women, I know that's very hard for us because we've been raised that we fight, we stick it out, nobody lets us, nobody sees us suffer,
Don't
right?
let
That
them
we,
know.
right, all these things.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I reframe it as a therapist that we are reclaiming our power back by saying that we will no longer be in harmful situations that harm us physically, psychologically, spiritually. We will no longer do that. And we're reclaiming our power and exerting our finding and following through with other options that don't harm us. Because there's other ways. There's other ways to make money.
There are others. Yeah. There really are. Yeah, and it's coming to that point of radical acceptance, I think was key for me. And therapy helped me a lot with that.
True.
Being like, no, this environment is harming you and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And you know what? You know how I know it gets worse? Because after I resigned over a year ago, there are still people, not just Black women, there are still people from that old job that I resigned from. They are following me. They're watching me on YouTube and other stuff. They're watching me and they are sending me messages. I didn't even know some of these people. They're contacting me. Oh, I'm so glad you're talking about this. This place is horrible. It's worse. I'm so glad you got out. So I'm telling you, this is how I know. This is confirmation. I know that I made the right decision and it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better.
It doesn't. Yeah. And I know for me, unfortunately, I re-entered after I took FMLA. I re-entered the environment.
Wow.
Because they had denied my short-term disability claim. So I was in credit card debt.
Oh, God.
As a result. So I re-entered that to get my bonus and get my financial situation together. And then I had to leave, right? And in that time, it got worse. So I wouldn't make that decision again. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like God was saying, girl, I'm telling you, it's not going to get any better. It's worse. I'm telling you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And let us pay attention to those signs.
Yes. That's key.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about some of the things, I know you mentioned a little bit, but some of the things you're going to be teaching about the financial masterclass with Dr. Roche coming up.
Yes. Okay. And can I just say this too? I hope I don't embarrass you how much I talk about how much I love working with you. And when you work with people who really are there to support you, like I want to support you, we support each other. And when you work for yourself, that it's important for you to work with people who can help you. Okay. Because I was out here trying to do all of it and I cannot do all of it. Right.
Yeah.
And so saying I need to work with somebody. And so it's been such a blessing to work with you. And in terms of the things that I'm offering now. So the financial masterclass again, which is get your money right and leave that job. Okay. Leave that job. Okay. It's a financial masterclass for Black women and it's 2 days. So it's January 3rd and 4th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern each day. It is Zoom webinar, so no one will see you. And some of the things that we will be covering. So again, it's me, Dr. Roche Brown. Dr. Roche Brown is a financial psychologist, and I work with her to get my money right, more than right, so I can resign from my job. So in the masterclass, we're going to be talking about what are some of the common fears. There's fears. The fears can keep you there. I know. Okay, we're going to talk about how to confront and walk through the fears. We're also going to talk about creating your financial plan based upon when you want to go. We all have just determined when we want to go. Some people are like, I want to go yesterday. Okay.
Yeah.
We come up with a plan for you. Or you could say, I can make it 3 months or 6 months or a year. So whatever time frame that you want to leave, you will leave that masterclass with your financial plan. We also talk about ways to replace your income because we need to be able to replace our income. So what are your different options? If you want to pivot to another job, if you want to create your own business, if you want to have side hustles, we talk about that. We talk about creating multiple streams of income because we don't want to just rely on one source of income ever. Okay. So think about many times when we're at a job, that is our only source of income. Okay. So we're going to talk about creating multiple streams of income, or Stephanie Perry says, multiple rivers of income. And we're going to talk about with your health insurance, because again, we get tied into that so-called good job, the good benefits, we're going to talk about what to do about your healthcare benefits, that you have options, even in terms of your retirement, all of that available to you. Okay. So we deal with the mindset, but we also deal with the practical things that you need to have so that you can create that plan and leave. You will be leaving that masterclass with the plan. Okay. Now, many of us, myself included, got money traumas or money issues or money stories. And that's why we avoid
Yes.
money stuff. So we're going to get up close and personal for the money. Nobody's going to be sharing about your own personal money story. But even though we're talking about things that are necessary, things that you may have been avoiding, remember I talked about before, that's a sign of trauma when we avoid these situations. Okay? You're going to get up close and personal with this, because avoidance doesn't help you. Long term, it doesn't help you. And so even though it's heavy, we make it fun. Okay. So Dr. Roche and I, there's going to be portions where we have music, we dancing, right? We're going to hype you up, but you will be leaving with a plan. And again, this is not for let me just say this. This is not for Black women who are thinking, oh, you're trying to convince me to go. You don't know if I leave, I'm going to be homeless. Sis, this is not for you. Okay. This is for Black women who are saying, I am ready. I really want a different life for myself. I hate this job. I dread going there every day. I'm crying on my way to work. I'm crying leaving work. I got to get out of here. Okay. This is the masterclass for you. These are the women I'm talking about. Black women who are saying, I want out. I just don't know how to get out. How can you help me? Okay. So we're Harriet. We're the inner Harriets, right? So we're reaching for you. We're going to channel you out so you can get out. So that financial plan. If the money is the main thing keeping you there, we're helping you get out.
Yes, yes. And I know for me, like the level of childhood trauma I had around finances led me to the point where I couldn't even look at my finances after, leaving that job.
Me too.
And you have helped me with that a lot. Like, it's okay.
Awesome.
It's okay to get look at your bank. It's not going to bite you.
Right, exactly. So when I was working with Dr. Roche, she was saying to me, so I started working with her when I was on a leave of absence, right? And she said to me, when I first started working with her, so what is the dollar amount that you need to leave that job so that you can replace your income? What is the dollar amount? And I didn't know because I've been avoiding money stuff for so long. And so now I'm in a different place. And then Marissa, you were speaking to, just to tell everybody too, I am becoming a Hello 7 certified coach. So over the past year, I've gone through a very extensive, intensive coaching program through Rachel Rogers. And she teaches Black women or people, marginalized groups, about we should all be millionaires. And I completely agree with that. So Marissa allowed for me to practice coaching with her. And one of the things that we worked on was that Marissa needed to look at her money more often. So so it's something that's common for all of us. But I'm just saying we cannot avoid it. It doesn't get any better if we don't avoid it, if we don't confront our money issues.
Yeah, that avoidance strategy, like you said, it works short term. Long term, it puts you in.
Man, and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah. Can't relate. Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to see a question from Merritt. Yes, there will be replays. So I'm working on the back end for that. But yes, replays will be sent out as well. Yeah.
Yes. Was she talking about masterclass the replays for the masterclass?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There'll be replays.
Yes. H&D abroad. Yeah. Fighting yourself, holding your tongue, and ignoring your feelings is exhausting. It is.
It is exhausting.
It's so exhausting. It drains everything out of you, right?
Yes.
Because you're having to put on the mask when you go in for the whole day. And then try to get back to yourself somehow after you leave.
And you know what? I honestly used to feel like I used to listen to on my way to the job, I would have to listen to like hype songs. I would have to like pump myself up before I would go into the job. And there was this one Jill Scott song, I think it was like Getting Ready or something like that. And she talked about staring monsters in their face. I would walk into the job and I felt like I was staring monsters in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, is this the life that I want for myself?
Yeah.
No, I don't want this life. No.
Nope. Nope. And then having to walk on eggshells and like someone might say something like to undercut you, those microaggressions, right? That
Oh,
we
yeah.
experience often, trying
Yeah.
to chip away at your self-esteem
Yes.
little by little. And then you're gaslighting yourself. Like,
Right.
did I make that up? Did they really say
Right.
that? Because no
Right.
one said anything in my defense, but no, they
Right.
did.
Right.
They said
And I just want to
Mm-hmm.
add too, and I know I've talked about this a few times in some of my other videos. Colette calls it organizational lynching. I call it psychological lynching. But I think many of us have had this experience where we're in the workplace and let's say we speak out about something.
Yep.
And they don't like that because it's a dysfunctional system. So the system likes to continue as it is. And anyone who speaks out about the system, there's a push out. And so that was me. I was the one who would speak out about things. And there was an attempt to not only discredit me, there was an attempt to humiliate me. And with the attempt to humiliate me, that the psychological part was it was getting in my head. So I was starting to think less than of myself in some ways.
Me too.
I was starting to think, did I want to be a psychologist anymore? Maybe I didn't want to be a psychologist. All in my head, right? And then they would do things to humiliate and discredit and dehumanize me. So that's the part where I came up with the psychological lynching, because they wanted people to see me. They wanted people to see what they had done to me. They demoted me for no reason. There was no reason. They just said, we just phase out your position. And I've heard this a lot from Black women. I've heard this a lot. So the more I talk about it, I'm like, oh my God, that happened to me. They're like, oh, we phase out your position because we need for you to straight up lies. Okay. Never had a negative job evaluation. There was no basis to it. So they demoted me. And it was a way for them to show people at the job, if you get out of line, you see what happens to Dr. Kimani, that's going to happen to you. And it worked. It worked. Because a lot of people that I thought I was cool with turned their back on me. They weren't there to support me. They just vanished. They just were no longer around because they were scared of what was going to happen to them next. So when you think about these toxic jobs, we talk about the plantation. It's buck breaking, but it's also a way to control people by fear and terror. And so again, that's another example of toxicity. That's another example of a toxic work environment.
Yeah. And that keeps so many of us, like you said, afraid to speak up.
Yes.
Because I know when I left, or before I left, I put out like a post of what happened to me because I was tired of keeping it inside. Right? Because it was burning inside me what had happened to me.
Yes.
And feeling like I had no place to share this.
Yes.
And from the outside, you couldn't tell because I was still doing my job so excellently. Right? Because that's just who I am.
And that's how we are as Black women. Like we're dealing with so much oppression in the workplace. And more than likely, we're doing up and above.
Yeah.
Up and above. I think Glam Mazzini said, she said, act like a mediocre white man, right? We're doing up and above everybody else. And we're still suffering.
We are. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, I want to read this comment here. I would love to take a sabbatical and just reset. Dealing with overbearing, micromanaging personalities in corporate is so heavy at times. It is. It is. Yeah. And I would say if you could take like a leave of absence, like Dr. Kimani always advocates for, right? Looking into your employee handbook to see what options exist there. Taking FMLA as an option, short-term disability, if that's available to you. But there are options. There are options out there that exist. I think we just don't know about them a lot of times by design.
Yeah, we don't.
Right.
And giving ourselves permission to do so.
Yeah.
Right. So don't listen to other people saying, girl, don't take that leave of absence. You letting them win. Really? So if you're dying inside and you feel like you are literally dying at this job, how is that letting them win? You are losing. Oh, there's Clemency. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that is so real. That is so real. There was a question I wanted to get to. Let me see. Donna asked, can you give an example of a childhood trauma that leads to a toxic job?
Mm.
If you can think of one.
Um,
I
what
can,
about this? What about this?
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So as Black people, we have been told in terms of having a level of respect and that you better not say anything. You better not
Yeah.
say anything. You stay in your place, right? So just
Mm-hmm.
think about if you've been harmed as a child and you were told, send the message that you better not say a word. You better just take it, right? So
Yeah.
then when you go into a toxic job, you have that mentality, you just have to take it. There's no
Yeah.
other options for you. So that's a very common, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
there's other types of trauma. So there's the physical abuse that could happen. So in terms of that fear, that terror, so you can have experiences at that job that can be a trauma trigger to other traumas that you've experienced in your life growing up. So it could be as simple, not as simple, but something very common that I think many Black people experience growing up is you better not say a word. You better not say a
Mm-hmm.
word.
Yeah.
You better not, all these other things, right? Or you do not share what happens in this house, in this job with
Mm-hmm.
other people. You just deal with it. So just think about how you were raised and think about all the messages that you received growing up and how there might be parallels to what's happening at your job.
Right.
It's so many different ways.
Darn.
So many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Ooh, can definitely relate to that. H&D Abroad says EAP is confidential. Only aggregate info is shared with the employer. Thank you. Thank you for that. That is good to know. Yes. In this comment, or having to pump yourself up in general, can we just work and be left alone?
Mm.
Nope. I was told recently I should be more aggressive. Can't win.
What?
Yeah.
See,
It's like,
that's
mm-hmm.
a setup. That's a setup,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because guess what? When you become more aggressive, then you're too aggressive.
Yeah.
Then you're making people feel intimidated by you. Don't
Mm.
don't fall for the lie. That's my mother said. Don't fall for the okey doke. That's an okey doke. That's an okey doke
Yeah.
trick. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
Because we can't win. We can't win. It's
because
like, especially if you're an introvert as a Black woman, right? It's like, why are you so quiet? What's wrong with you? It's like, this is just my personality.
right. But
Right?
again, it goes
Yeah.
back to Alicia Bernice when she was talking about the game
Yeah.
is rigged,
It is.
the door's crooked. All of these things are making us think there's something wrong with us as individuals, but the system is
Yeah.
dysfunctional. The
Yeah.
system, the water is dirty. The
Yes.
whole thing is dirty.
The whole thing. Yeah.
Don't
So
drink the
true.
water.
No. Don't. Please don't. Please don't.
Don't drink it. It's poisonous.
Yeah. It is. It is. Yes. Miss Hurricane says, find the article from office pet to threat. From office pet to office threat. Yes. And this is a term coined by 3 Black women professors. I
Yes.
always, Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, and Dr. Bailey.
Juanita Johnson Bailey. Yes.
Juanita Bailey.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just briefly, I love that you brought that up. So Pet to Threat was created by these 3 Black women researchers that we just talked about. So again, I'll say their names again. Dr. Juanita Johnson Bailey, Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps.
Yes.
These are 3 Black women researchers, and I want to say their names. Every time I say Pet to Threat, I say their names because people steal their work and don't give them credit. So I've had them on my channel. I've had 2 of them on my channel for several panels. So check out those videos I have on my YouTube channel. But Pet to Threat, and I experienced this, and I didn't tell you this, Marissa. Dr. Thomas reached out to me. She's going to interview me about my experience with Pet to Threat for Forbes tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. So I'll share
Celebrating you.
later. But
yes.
Pet to Threat deals with when a Black woman is brought into the workplace and she is excelling. So she's doing up and above. She is she is doing it, right? And so when she's doing something at a very high level in the workplace, people see her and they're like, oh, we love Marissa. She's so smart. She's just magic. She just makes everything work. Then Marissa, the pet, then Marissa starts getting more attention than other people. Let's say those in leadership position, then it switches.
Oh, you're telling my life.
Right? Oh, what? How dare she? I got to put her in her place, right? So it switches in terms of how you may be seen and treated. You're treated like a threat, the push out. That happened to me. And that's how I linked it to the psychological lynching, because I started getting way more attention from other people, from things I was doing that they had never done. And then boom, demoted, right? Like, oh, you think, oh, we're going to demote you and we're going to do all these other things to you. So many Black women experience pet to threat. They may not know the term, but they know the experience. Okay. So again, check out those videos that I have on my YouTube channel about pet to threat.
Yes. Yes. And even learning about that concept, right? I'm like, I didn't even know this existed.
Right.
And that was when I was in the throes of like the trauma from the job and realizing, oh, this is what I'm experiencing. It's not me.
Yes.
I just went from pet to threat.
Man.
In the workplace, and that kind of helps you externalize.
Like, what has happened? Like, it doesn't make any sense because you're thinking logically. And I tell Black women all the time, because they'll come to me, but it doesn't make logical sense. I said, sis, it's not going to make logical sense because, first of all, you don't have all the information. There's a lot of underhanded, shady stuff they're doing behind your back. The other thing is you're trying to make logical sense out of something that it's not logical. So you would think, wow, well, wouldn't they love that I'm doing this great stuff in the workplace? And no, because you're dealing with people's egos and you're dealing with deeply insecure people who would take you down at all costs. They don't care about the organization. They're going to take you down because you make them look bad, because they're the real imposters, right? Imposter syndrome. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? They're the real imposters. You got people who are deeply insecure and they're projecting their own insecurities, their own incompetence onto you. And then you start thinking, is it me? No, sis. They are the real imposters. They are.
Yep. Yep. And when we think about how workplaces function, like similar to a plantation system often, right? If you excel, if you shine, it's like your oppressors are still going to try to like dim your light and make you feel like something's wrong with you because like you said, they're insecure.
Exactly. Remember the term, the uppity, right? The uppity.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening in the workplace.
Yeah. Ooh, that is so true. That is so true. Glamazini says there was a TikTok by a white woman admitting to the concept of pet to threat. Wow. I'm going to have to search for that. Wow. That's interesting. So doing that deliberately and being...
She noted that she had been doing that to people.
I'm thinking that's what it was. Let me see. We got it.
And I bet she didn't cite those 3 Black women researchers, because let me tell you, when I reached out to them, I reached out to all 3 of them. 2 of them I've been able to have on the channel. I was told by them, I was the first person that ever reached out to them.
Oh, wow.
Like, are you kidding me? People been quoting you, citing your work.
Exactly.
No.
Wow.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Let's give them credit.
And that term has been like eye-opening for so many of us who have experienced it. We know what we feel, right? But to have the words to it, like, oh, this is how it functions, like systematically. This is what you may expect. In these types of workplaces. That's huge.
Isn't it?
That's huge. Yeah. Wow. Yes. Let's see. Why has a question? Any thoughts on asking your therapist about their political views, worldview? I think that would help me trust my therapist more.
I say do it. Do it. Yeah. Because if this is the person you're going to be sharing your deep, dark secrets with, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's important because, like you said, you have to interview your therapist, right? Just like any other relationship. Right? 2 people. You have to make sure you're on the same page. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's key. Glamazini said, yes, she noticed she was doing it to Black women. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Lamborghini,
okay.
can you send us that video if you have
Ooh,
it, or can you email me that?
yeah.
That is fast. I would love to see that.
She noticed
Oh
it and went
my
to therapy to
God.
figure out why she was feeling some type of way.
Oh my God.
Whoa. Okay. I
Lamborghini,
have to see this video.
please send that. Please email me
Yes.
that. Oh my God.
Ooh. Um, and yeah, just to think about how often we're gaslighted, right? In workplaces, when we do experience this, like, no, you're making it up. So to see someone who's actively doing it say, no, I am doing this, and I do feel this way about Black women. I feel
Ooh,
insecure in their
ooh.
presence, right? That's why I'm doing
Wow.
it. That's,
Wow.
oh my
And let me
gosh.
say something too. So a lot of my comments, because you see the comments in my videos, a lot of the
Yeah.
comments have to deal with other Black women treating you wrong in the workplace. But I've had a lot of videos also talking about white women and how treacherous, these experiences have been, where we or the women present themselves that they're, pro woman, whatever, and they are doing some heinous things in the
Mm-hmm.
workplace.
Yes. 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 Can relate. Can relate to that. That was my experience. That was my
Yes.
experience. All for like the feminism, right? And treating me as a Black woman in the way I was treated. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's like
yeah,
those
a lot of,
remnants of slave mentality,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You can't mask that. They couldn't mask.
No, no, that's true. It's
Hmm.
true. Yeah, a lot of thoughts on white feminism.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that could be a series of
That could,
videos.
yeah,
Okay.
it could. It really could. It really could. But yeah, I do want to be respectful of your time. But as we're wrapping up, I wanted to ask about your other offerings that you may have besides the masterclass coming up on January 3rd and 4th, and then how people can continue to follow your journey online.
Thank you, Marissa.
Yeah.
So the easiest thing to follow me is on YouTube. So Lifting Us We Climb Consulting Wellness Services. So go over there and subscribe to my channel, watch my videos, share the videos with other Black women. So I'm very clear that I'm ushering in a movement to help as many Black women as I can to leave and heal from toxic jobs. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the masterclass that I have coming up January 3rd and 4th. Get your money right and leave that toxic job, financial masterclass for Black women. That's coming up. And then I have a weekly newsletter that Marissa does. It's so outstanding. I love it. So there's a weekly newsletter to keep you posted about things that are coming up. And then I am about to be a Hello 7 certified coach. So I will be helping Black women leave toxic jobs in terms of coaching you through that to see what is the next thing you want to do. Okay. So more for that is coming up in the newsletter.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited. All the things you got going on. And you're helping us along the way.
Yes.
Realize that we don't have to stay stuck in toxic work
Yes.
environments. There are
No.
other options and ways to make money.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
that is
Absolutely.
key. That is key.
Absolutely. Yes.
So you
Okay.
don't have to stay. Yeah,
One more
please.
announcement. Okay.
Yeah.
So my other announcement is not about me per se, but this is just a shout out to the color purple. If you have not, you see I'm wearing purple today.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I was invited to a private screening of the color purple with the Loveland Foundation because I'm a Loveland Foundation therapist in LA. So we got to see the color purple, and Fantasia was there. It was a Q&A with her. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Much.
Yes.
And the color purple, the new rendition, is heavy. It's heavy. However, there's a lot of focus on healing. A lot of focus
Right.
on healing, music, dance, cultural forms of healing, all those things. So again, I want to support us. If you are in a space to go see the color purple, okay, and you get a purple hat like me. I got this from Fedora Designs, but go see the
Yes.
color purple also.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Mary says she might see it on Christmas. I love that.
Awesome.
That feels like a perfect Christmas movie too.
Yes.
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 Yes. But yes, as we're winding down, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest tonight,
Thank you,
and
Marissa.
sharing everything that you shared and helping so many of us leave toxic jobs and realize there are other options
Yes.
available. We don't have to suffer. We don't have to
No.
stay and suffer.
No.
Okay. And thank y'all so much for all your comments in the chat. And if you're watching on the replay, please leave a comment, like it. And yeah, until next time, y'all. Thank you for being here. Later.
Bye.
Bye.